If you are a minister, you have several key tax issues that make you uniquely different from other taxpayers. These are things like the housing allowance, being a W-2 employee, but still having to pay both sides of the FICA tax. And then there's the big one, in my opinion, the ability to opt out of Social Security. Now, this is probably one of the most complex financial planning issues that you're going to face early in your career, and it carries a very high degree of long-term negative consequences if you make the wrong decision. And that's what we're talking about in today's video, so stay tuned. Hey, I'm Devin, and this channel is all about simplifying retirement planning. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell so you don't miss anything I publish. And everyone ought to hit that like button. So if you're a new minister, I know that making the decision about opting out of Social Security can be very complicated. I get questions on this all the time, and towards the end of this video, I'm going to answer some of the most common questions I receive, and I'm also going to put a lot of resources in the description below. If you're on a mobile device, you can just click that arrow and drop that down to see the description. But right off, you have to understand that it's more than just a financial decision. If you opt out, you must agree, under penalty of perjury, to the following language. I certify that I am conscientiously opposed to, or because of my religious principles, I am opposed to the acceptance of any public insurance that makes payments in the event of death, disability, old age, or retirement, or that makes payments towards the cost of or provides services for medical care. Now, that's weighty for sure, but my focus for this video is not to debate the ethical and moral considerations of opting out. The good Lord knows there's already been plenty written about that. My goal is to examine the economic aspects of opting out. Specifically, I want to help quantify what you're giving up when you opt out of Social Security. And this is a decision that you have to consider very carefully, because once you get out, you generally cannot get back in. There are some websites that say you can get back in by filing an IRS Form 2031, but rest assured, unless the law changes, you cannot get back in. There was a brief period of time where you could revoke this exemption and get back in, but that's been gone since 2002. So now it's permanent. This means that if you opt out, you're going to be stuck with this for the rest of your life. Not only is this an irrevocable decision, but you have a very small window of time to make this decision too. If you opt out, there is a deadline to file the IRS paperwork, and it's by the second year of your tax return when you receive ministerial income. So this is a big decision that most people have to make when they are barely in their 20s. And I don't know about you. Some of the decisions I made in my 20s, I'm glad they weren't irrevocable because they were stupid, especially some of the stuff I did with money. But that's a video for another day, I know. So when you're making this decision, you have to know what you're giving up in return for those taxes. There's no denying that 15.3% of your salary is a lot of money, but in exchange for that, you're eligible for a lot of benefits. For example, if you retire, you get Social Security retirement benefits. If you die, Social Security survivors benefits. If you become disabled, Social Security disability. If you need medical care, you get Medicare. And in order to determine whether or not you'd be better off to opt out, we really have to know how much would it cost to replace all the benefits that Social Security is going to pay for. Now, let me preface this by saying this comparison that I'm doing here, it's going to be rough numbers. Your particular situation is likely going to be different because of your marital status, the dependents you have, your household income, and we could go on and on with a lot of different factors here. But just for this illustration, let's look at the example of John, right? So he's 25 years old. He's recently graduated college, and he started his first ministry position with a starting salary of $30,000. Now, in our illustration, we're going to assume that his salary increases by 3% every year until he retires at age 67. Based on this, it's fairly easy to calculate that John would pay in nearly $377,000 in self-employment taxes. And this assumes that the tax rate doesn't change too. So what would happen if John opted out of Social Security and invested those dollars instead? Well, he'd have a lot of money. If the investments averaged 4% and he invested all of those monies, he'd have around $796,000. If his investments averaged 8%, he'd have over $2 million. Now that sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? But remember all those things that your Social Security taxes provide? These things are going to cost a lot of money, and there are two of them that you will be covered with before you retire. So you don't get to invest all of the tax savings. You have to spend some of it to insure the risk that exists prior to retirement, such as disability and death. That's only fair since the Social Security system would provide these benefits if you became disabled at an early age, or if you passed away, there would be benefits payable to your spouse or children. So to simulate a replacement for these benefits, you'll need to purchase life insurance and disability insurance. For the life insurance, I assumed you'd just buy $500,000 death benefit in two 20-year terms. The first 20-year term would only be about $360 per year if your health was good. The second year, it would go up to around $900 per year. For disability, I just assumed that a decent policy would probably cost you about 3% of your annual salary. So if you take that out and invest what's left, your investment balance at age 67 changes. At a 4% rate of return, you'd have $584,000 instead of $795,000. At 8%, you'd have more than $500,000 less. So those are the amounts that John, in this situation, would have to work with at those two rates of return. Now, the question is that enough? Well, we know that if you pay in enough Social Security taxes, the two retirement expenses that are paid for are your Medicare Part A premiums and your Social Security payments. So we'll do some quick math to figure out what these expenses would be in the future, but I feel confident that if we take today's prices and benefits and we add a 2% annual increase to those current amounts, that's going to put us close enough. So the current cost, if you had to pay for your own Medicare Part A premium, is $437 per month. Again, most people don't pay for this, but if you don't have sufficient work history, you can buy it outright, and it's probably cheaper than buying your own health insurance elsewhere. And if we increase that by 2% all the way up to age 67, your Medicare premium would be $984. Now, if we look at Social Security benefits and we consider how much would we have to take out for that, if you have someone who has a $30,000 inflation-adjusted income, they'd get a benefit of around $1,400. Now, if we inflate that all the way out to their age 67, it's going to be around $3,200. That means that they're going to need $4,184 per month in month one of retirement, and we want to increase that by 2% per month as we move forward. So we're assuming that you're either earning 4% or 8% in your portfolio, and you're taking out this $4,184 plus increasing that by 2% every year. So how would this work out? Well, if you'd only receive 4% per year, you'd be broke before you turn 79. But if you earned 8%, it would be a completely different story. You'd see enormous increases to your balance throughout retirement and retire a pretty rich person. Although it's not illustrated here, for those of you who are curious, the break-even return would be about 5.1%. So could this strategy of opting out work? Yes. Could this go very wrong? Yes. Here's a few considerations to think about now that you know the numbers. 1, will you invest every penny that you would have paid into Social Security? 2, are you 100% confident in your ability to get at least a 5.1% return? If not, what Social Security could provide you could possibly beat what you'll do. 3, if you become disabled, how will you cover your healthcare expenses? That's one that's nearly impossible to illustrate, or I would have covered it earlier, but the way it works with Social Security is that if you become disabled, you'll be eligible for Medicare after 24 months, and even if you're only 40 years old. But if you're not covered by Social Security and you become disabled, I really don't know what you would do. Even if Medicare would take you, you wouldn't have the income to pay for it. And if you were disabled, it's easy to assume that health care coverage would be pretty important. 4, would your spouse work? If not, then you really have to double the amount of Medicare premiums that you need in retirement and increase the Social Security benefit by 50% because of the spousal provisions in Social Security. And if that's the case, I don't know what rate of return you would need, but it would be really, really high just to break even, if not completely impossible. Listen, if you opt out, you need to understand that things can go great or things can go horribly wrong. Just understand, everyone's situation is different. Slight nuances in your work history or family status can make big differences in planning whether or not this is right for you. Just be careful with this decision. So in the comments below, I do want you to ask your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them as time allows. But here's some questions that I get all the time about this. Can I get a spousal benefit if my wife paid into Social Security? Yes, you can. Can I get Medicare if my wife paid into Social Security? Yes, you can. Can I get disability if my wife paid into Social Security? No, you cannot. Disability is only for those who have contributed enough in taxes for eligibility. If I have already earned enough credits for eligibility from other work, should I opt out? You could. Just remember that the disability portion of Social Security has a recent work test. Typically, you have to have worked and contributed to Social Security for 5 of the past 10 years to qualify for disability. So unlike the other programs where you meet eligibility then walk away, that does not work for disability. If I do work on the side that contributes to Social Security, should I opt out? You could, and that could make a lot of sense. Just depends. Listen, if you don't already have a tax advisor who has an in-depth knowledge of the unique tax issues for ministers, you need to get one. And just so you know, I'm not one. Also, in the description below, I'm going to give a list of resources from the IRS and Social Security that'll probably answer a lot of your questions. If you have more questions, if you just want to do a cost analysis, you can find out how to hire me at devincarroll.com. Up at the top, it says contact me or hire me, something like that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day.